So you decide to publish this? What's going on?
Well, what happens is that, to my surprise, no media outlet reports on the Cote Cabezudo case, which I found astonishing, having brought it up myself. When someone brings up some information, other media, relevant information about a serial rapist who has raped dozens of girls, yes?
And with a structure?
And who has distributed exactly those images on paid pornographic websites, right? And I find a deafening silence. Which didn't surprise me, because the first thing I did, when I got the information, I started to investigate and look to cross-check what I had received. And I spoke with a friend of mine who had been a high-ranking officer in the Ertzaintza, the Basque Autonomous Police, during the years I worked in Bilbao. And he told me, look, I'm retired now, I can't help you, because I no longer have access to documentation and such. So you ask me, do I know Cote Cabezudo, the Cote Cabezudo case? Melchor told me, I know him perfectly well. I know him so well that besides being a journalist, you're a friend, because we've had a relationship for many years, right? I'm warning you, Melchor, you have no idea what you're getting into. Because I care, be very careful. Because the guardian ad litem was a joke compared to the matter you're getting yourself into. These are dangerous, violent people. So I had already been warned by someone I trust that I was getting involved in a delicate matter. And I start publishing, and I find that what happens is
An emptiness.
total silence in all media. Talk about the topic, right? For me, professional ostracism is hard. Me then, right? I was working as a contributor, which is what I lived off. Besides my work at my production company, I contributed to Spanish television on a morning talk show and on Risto Mejidi's program on Cuatro at Mediaset.
What's the name of Risto's show? Todo es mentira?
And both on Spanish television and on Risto's show, right? One day I bring up the Cote Cabezudo case and finish saying Cabezudo. They cut me off, like going to commercials or a video or something, and tell me we can't talk about this, and then say goodbye to me. It's something I couldn't believe, right? But it happened. Huh? And with media outlets that boast about publishing and telling the truth? Well, in the case of Risto Mentira, Risto Mejide, his show is called Everything is a Lie. But they act like progressives and mention Cote Cabezudo. Interruption. Put in an ad, play a video, and tell me the Sun, that's as far as we've come.
Why do you think that? Tell me a little bit about the background. I imagine you've done a lot. You must have done a lot of thinking about why this particular case set off the alarm so strongly. And was it that hard for you?
Well, this thing I told you about Cote Cabezudo's statement in court, right? Well, it's very illustrative, isn't it? That this man said in the statement that he has sexual videos in which important people appear. And then what I have found, because I insist, I'm not talking about conspiracies, okay? Important people, right? And I have published it, okay? Two names of two relevant people, one of them Jorge Fernández, star presenter of A3 Media, from the show The Wheel of I Don't Know What, okay? I have published that Jorge Fernández was the male protagonist of a session, a photograph by Cote Cabezudo of child pornography, in which Jorge Fernández appears with a minor. Did you know that?
I have no idea.
Have you seen it anywhere?
No idea. What I do know is that the case you're telling me about sounds really familiar, like the Spanish Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, there might be similarities, but I insist that it already happened, okay? I was the one who handed over the images of Jorge Fernández to the prosecutor's office. And the San Sebastian prosecutor's office issued a decree stating that these are images that constitute
A crime?
child pornography. The one starring Jorge Fernández, and he couldn't take legal action because the crime had expired. Because the images were from years before. I called Jorge Fernández before handing it over to the prosecutor's office because Jorge Fernández, his name kept coming up in Cote Cabezudo's mouth, who spoke of him as his friend, a role model who was Mr. Spain, because Cabezudo took his photos and promoted him. And Cote Cabezudo's studio was covered in photos of Jorge Fernández. And while investigating the case, I spoke with Jorge 3 times, calling him Jorge. Would it be important for the victims of Cote Cabezudo if a relevant person like you spoke up and shared what you know? And I don't want to talk, I don't want anything. For the documentary in their name from Netflix, we asked him to participate because we thought it was important for a guy who was a friend of Cabezudo, someone Cabezudo talked about constantly, to say what he knew. For the victims, right? And Jorge Fernández, he said, I don't want to know, don't mention Cote Cabezudo. Well then, before I handed over to the prosecutor's office the photos, the images of Jorge Fernández with a minor, I called him, I said, hey Jorge, I'm calling you again because, some images of you from a session with Cote Cabezudo of child pornography in which you appear. An adult with a minor who is 15 years old. And then he says to me, hey, wait. He gives me the name even though I hadn't given him any. He gives me the name of the model who appeared, the 15-year-old model, let's say Mari Carmen. I don't want to give her real name. He told me, I didn't know Mari Carmen was underage. And then I said to him, hey Jorge, huh? I see that you remember the session perfectly because I never gave you Mari Carmen's name. I told you about a session with a minor, right? But I didn't know she was a minor. And I said, hey, if this is with the prosecutor's office, then, right? Tres Media still keeps as the network's star host today a guy who has been the male lead in child pornography sessions. And then they go on and on about it on their networks, on Antena 3, on La Sexta, talking about women, about feminism and all that. And you say, hey, your star host of the most watched show on your network has made child pornography with a minor, you know? Nobody talks about the matter. I've published that Juan Maria Arzac, a famous chef, I don't know if the name rings a bell, the most important chef in Spain for years. Don't forget that I published the testimonies of 2 women who explain that in those pornography sessions by Cote Cabezuelo, Juan Maria Arzac appeared. Has that been published or mentioned anywhere? No, right? Well, I've already given you 2 important names, right? And after that, right? This judge, Yolanda Domenyo, who, according to the testimonies provided, was the one who organized those high-voltage sexual parties, right? Yolanda Domenyo filed a lawsuit against me and against Mario Diaz, the lawyer for the victims of Cote Cabezudo. And the court ruled in our favor because it said that what we had said was true, and she lost the lawsuit. And just so you get an idea, Jota, and so the viewers can get an idea of the level of protection that Cote Cabezudo, the serial rapist, had, right? When Judge Ana Isabel Perez Asenio was still handling the investigation, this infamous judge who had to be removed, right? On one occasion, on several occasions, the victim's lawyer, M, he requested that Cote Cabezudo be sent to prison, logically, and the judge denied it. And on one occasion, the prosecutor Bermudez from the San Sebastian court, right? You know that the prosecutor's office is hierarchical, and if a boss tells a prosecutor what to do, he has to do it. So prosecutor Bermudez, right? After the umpteenth request to imprison Cabezudo, he told his superior, as you know, the prosecutor's office is hierarchical. And so, after the umpteenth request made by Mario Diaz, the victim's lawyer, for Cote Cabezudo to be sent to prison, right? Prosecutor Bermudez informed his superior, whose name was Carmen Rebolo, who was the chief prosecutor of San Sebastian. He says, hey, there's another hearing for request for Cabezudo's imprisonment. I am going to request imprisonment. So what then? Carmen Rebolo. It's important for people to know the names of those who have done things. Prosecutor Carmen Rebolo ordered Prosecutor Bermudez not to request the imprisonment of Cote Cabezudo. And then Prosecutor Bermudez, who is an honest and decent man, said to her, well, if you order me not to request imprisonment, then I won't request it. But I'm not going to oppose what the prosecution is requesting. And the chief prosecutor did something unusual, which was to remove him from that day and say, well, you're not going, I'm going myself. And it was the chief prosecutor of San Sebastian who went to oppose his imprisonment, Cote Cabezudo.